Going to get us started. Thank you all for being here today. This is the 2022 Conservation Education Matrix Team Professional Development Webinar Series. We're so excited to have you. And the Conservation Education Matrix Team is made up of education and outreach professionals across different units within the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We work to collaborate on education initiatives and host this annual Professional Development Day, which is unfortunately virtual this year. We're really hoping that in future we're going to get back to being in person. This year's professional development theme is environmental education moving forward. Today, our session is Growing New Stewards, and we are featuring Emily Beck, who is the director of the Chesapeake Watershed Semester and Gunston School's Dean of Instruction and Innovation. And we also have Minister Brian Bordley with us, who is the Executive Wellness Director of One More, One Less Mentoring. I want to orient people to Google Meet a little bit today, since I know that not all of us use it. So you should see a microphone and a video icon at the bottom of your screen. During the presentation, we ask that you please keep yourself muted to prevent any background noise. You are welcome to keep your camera on, but if you're having connection issues, you may need to turn it off to preserve bandwidth. Today's presentation is being recorded, and if you do not wish to be in the recording, please turn off your camera. You will also see a closed captions button, raise hand button, and 3 vertical dots, which will allow you to change your format for optimal viewing. On the lower right of your screen, you should see the chat button. Please use the chat to ask questions along the way. I will be your moderator for the session. Jen Wolf will be monitoring the chat, and Tristan Sill will be your IT help. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you all. I'm going to stop sharing now and come back to the screen. And I'm now going to pass the session off to Emily Beck.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. As I was introduced, I'm Emily Beck. I'm at the Gunston School in Centerville, Maryland. I'm both the director of the Chesapeake Watershed Semester and then Gunston's Dean of Instruction and Innovation. And I wanted to start us off with just a quick poll, wondering how you have seen both formal and non-formal programs respond. So hopefully you should see the poll if you can take a second to answer. How have you seen schools adapting programming during COVID?
Everyone should have gotten a prompt window that you can access it, but if you don't know how to get to the polls, it's next to that chat box that's the triangle, square, and circle, and you should see polls there.
All right, I've got 2 or 3 votes come in, a couple more coming in. Just want to quickly kind of take everybody's pulse. What are we seeing? I will be sharing how my school has responded across 2 different programs, but I'm curious for the good of the whole to know what we're seeing out there. So thank you for jumping in. The results should be visible to you now if you want to see. We've got schools that shifted to remote learning, canceled field trips happened a lot, and then a shift to virtual field trips and virtual programming. And that echoes a lot of what we saw happen at Gunston. So let me pull up my screen for you all. All right, so we've been through our poll. So what I'm focusing on today is how we adapted our experiential environmental education programming during what is now, we're in the 3rd academic year for modifications to our program. And thank you to everybody who introduced themselves in the chat. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually. And this is certainly one of the ways that we have adapted our programs and our meetings, is to be able to use virtual opportunities to connect with one another. This is a photo from Bay Studies, one of our programs in 2021. You can see we're masked, we're distanced, but we're out in the field. And that was so exciting to get to. So the Gunston School, if you're not familiar with us, we are an independent high school. We're located in Centerville, Maryland. We're on the shores of the Corsica River. This is our campus. Beautiful waterfront facility has given our school an incredible commitment to environmental teaching and learning because it is around us every single day as the students move back and forth across campus. Embedded in our mission statement is a commitment to educating environmentally minded scholars. We find our graduates have a very deep sense of place. We've been offering a program that I'll tell you a little bit more about called Chesapeake Bay Studies for 3 decades now. We're a green school. We will be a sustainable school with the Mayo Green Schools this coming year. We have an environmental strategic plan, and then we have a climate science graduation requirement, which is part of our Bay Studies program. So Bay Studies typically has been 17 different field courses that happen in 1 week in May for all 235 students, and my 35 teachers and administrators are all out in the field. So that program is definitely a huge draw for us, for students who want to attend the school. It's also something that our alumni remember so fondly, the experiences that they had, the community building, the learning, the education, and the connection to place. And as we say, saving the Bay is a test. If we pass, we get to keep the planet. Fortunately, things are moving gradually in a positive direction, at least no longer definitely in a negative direction. So in 2020, we were fully remote. We went remote in March. And one of the things that I personally struggle with, because I had young children at home, all the parks were closed. All the playgrounds were closed. You could only go fishing if it was for subsistence fishing. If you were going to eat it, you couldn't go for recreational fishing. And what we were so excited to see was when the week that Bay Studies launched was the week that Governor Hogan opened up for outdoor recreation purposes were allowable again. So we offered a virtual Bay Studies program that focused on getting the students out of doors at home with their family members. So it was a backyard camp out. I hosted a virtual sunrise. So I was at Gunston's waterfront doing sunrise on Zoom, and I had about 30 students who also hopped up at their various locations at sunrise, and we watched together. So we put together this extensive guide of different activities for students to do, to have the investigation, to have the time in the natural world to really codify their learning, but it was all done remotely, which was not what we were hoping for, obviously. All right, let me switch back. So in 2021, we were back on campus. We were masked, we were distanced, we had all sorts of COVID protocols, and we were able to offer an in-person Bay Studies, including a one-night overnight that involved every student sleeping in their own tent. So there's a great story of the road trip that my head of school took. We had bought a van, and he was driving from Connecticut back down to Maryland. He stopped at every single REI, Bass Pro, Cabela's, Walmart, and bought tents, bought every single tent that he could find, so that we now own 60 tents. So we could sleep an entire grade level on Echo Hill's campus in their own tents. So you see this kind of carefully scripted program. We could bring the students together for the day. They could have these great hands-on experiences, but it involved lots of different locations. And it was the first time for many of our partners, Echo Hill, Sultana, and the Bay Foundation, that they were working with students again in person. And so we were really grateful that they were willing to kind of step out and pilot some of their modified in-person programming. And then it's 2022. We are looking forward to Bay Studies this year. And really diving back in. The island centers are open. We will be headed out to various locations across the watershed and beyond. We are taking some comparative watershed trips this year. So we are able to travel again. We're not putting anyone on a plane, but we are getting them out beyond the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The other program that was more deeply impacted during COVID was Gunston's Chesapeake Watershed semester. The Watershed semester is an intensive 15-week-long semester. It's sort of like doing a study abroad semester for juniors or seniors in high school. So we see in this program, it is immersive, it's place-based learning, it's rigorous, it's practicing leadership, and the students are a small cohort are traveling together across the watershed. They're on campus for 2 to 3 weeks for classes, and then they're in the field for a week. And given the nature of the program, we had to operate to mothball the program in the fall of 21. In the fall of 22, we were able to return to the field again with some mitigation in place. So the students take an academic core set of courses. They're all focused on the Chesapeake Bay, and they provide the backbone for the learning expeditions. So students are taking environmental science, American government, literature of land and water. They have an independent research project, which is their capstone, and then they're enrolled in a leadership seminar course as well. So this one, we call the entire watershed our classroom, 64,000 square miles. All the pin dots are different locations that we have had week-long expeditions at over the course of the past several years that we've run the Watershed semester. So this was a program that unfortunately had to take a 1-year hiatus. I had a group of juniors that were super bummed about that, and many of them actually came back in the fall of their senior year to participate in the Watershed semester with us. So that was kind of that was the arc of how we were able to continue to have our students remain connected to the natural world, learning about the natural world, kind of from the remote learning through the in-person. And we're really looking forward to this coming year being, I'm gonna knock on wood on this one, as pre-pandemic as possible. And then one piece that I wanted to end with, that was kind of a very quick rundown, is, there were a lot of things that we learned about our program and what matters most and how to do it well through COVID. We kind of had to take everything that we knew, turn it on its head, shake it upside down, and really came away with some strong gems. And that's one question that I love to ask groups that I've been meeting with are, what are some of the things that you've learned? Are there ways that you are going to operate differently moving forward that are really gems that we want to keep with us? So feel free, you can either drop something in the chat if there's a gem or a nugget that you discovered in the past 2.5 years about environmental education or program operations, something that you want to continue to do moving forward, or you're welcome to unmute and share out with everybody here. Tristan, I see your hand up. What, you have a question or a comment?
No, I was going to answer your question.
Great, go for it.
I think one of my favorite things, and it isn't necessarily specific to environmental education, but just the flexibility that the hybrid model has offered people, like getting more families included and being accepting and grace, like giving the grace for people to, be in the car for meetings or have to bring their kids to a field trip or whatever that might be. Like, it just feels much more inclusive of a whole person rather than just a professional person.
That's a great point. We've definitely kind of reconsidered the work-life balance and your role, and how you can engage the folks around you. Uh, Got a comment in the chat. I learned not to be afraid of new technology. That was certainly something that we as a school went through. We spent a lot of time boosting our competencies for teaching, and having school online initially. And that was one of my favorite parts about the virtual-based studies, was the different ways that we allowed our students to engage and connect. So CBF was making YouTube videos and doing little virtual field trips. And so I was able to connect my students through to that, and then have them share what they learned and reflected through an app called Padlet, which is sort of a digital corkboard, message board sharing system that worked wonderfully.
I can add something. My name's Courtney, by the way. Hi, everyone. So I'm actually a student at the University of Maryland right now. And we went back like in person for our classes this previous fall. And we were actually able to have some of our classes like outside. Like everybody would just kind of like find grass areas or benches to sit on with our laptops. And it was actually like really nice being outside, being able to still be in class. And it kind of made me realize like I wish we had been doing it all along instead of just like sitting in classrooms all the time where it gets kind of like boring or dull.
That's a great point, Courtney, and something that we're working with an architect right now. We have a science building that's in design, and what the architect has reflected back to us is that is the number one piece that they are seeing that schools are asking for in designs moving forward. We spent so much time designing our schools and our office buildings to keep us indoors and in a climate-controlled environment. And I know personally, my campus, we had 2 different giant event tents that were set up on our campus. One of them is still up. It will finally be coming down later this spring. But that need to utilize the outdoors. We have an outdoor classroom. We bought extra picnic tables and Adirondack chairs. And that's something that I've seen lots of different organizations really think about how to better utilize their outdoor spaces for meetings and for gatherings. I know outdoor dining became a huge priority. Many schools, we were masked, we were distanced, but when you were eating was the time that folks in a shared space needed to take off their masks. And so there are a number of schools that I've chatted with that even if it was having folks, their students sitting out on the blacktop that maybe is the outdoor basketball court for recess, that's where everybody ate lunch. And that opportunity to get outside and get the fresh air and stretch your legs in the middle part of the day, I think is so important for mental health. And I know that's, something that we're really looking at moving forward as a school, is how we're supporting our social emotional health needs of our students.
Hey, this is Ashley Trout with Greater Baltimore Wilderness Coalition. I jumped on a little late, so you might have already covered this, but I'm curious, follow up on that last point, if you expose the students at all to the increasing amount of research showing the positive mental and physical health benefits of the environment.
My school has a unique attribute that we're on 35 waterfront acres, and we are spread across several small buildings. And one of the things that students remark on is you cannot spend your entire day inside. As students travel from class to class, they have to move outside between our buildings, and how much they enjoy that. And then, the couple of the programs that I've been talking about really give students that extended connection outdoors and to the natural world. And they are some of our most popular programs and remembered so deeply and so fondly. All right. Well, if there are other questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I do know that we have another presenter in today's session as well. So thank you all for your questions, your suggestions, lots of great nuggets.
Thank you so much, Emily. And yes, Emily will stay on and we'll have time for more questions at the end. But we are now going to hear from Minister Brian Bordley, and I'm going to pull up your presentation now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Minister Brian Bordley. I represent One More, One Less Mentoring, a nonprofit based in Baltimore, Maryland. This is our slideshow that we've been demonstrating to various schools that were interested in our program. Our program is called Operation Waterways Environmental Education. We decided to put a spin on it, which was a workforce development, so a boot camp pretty much. Most of these kids in inner cities are minorities that very rarely get access on or to the water. I've had the pleasure to fish around the world, and I wanted to come back to Baltimore to show them life skills as well as some mental health therapy using environment, and also giving them some fishing experiences. I believe that fishermen and fishing women are some of the best people on this planet. So I wanted to give them that understanding. Plus, it's a lot of guidance that comes in from the art of learning how to fish. So that's called OPWWEE. Now, this program was designed to help these kids learn how to have marine inclusion, environmental education, but just on a small scale was the initial that we came up with. I'm gonna let you read while I talk. To the bigger scale that we're at now. Last year, 2020, we first started this. I took over as the executive director of this nonprofit, and I was given a charge to do something different. Previously, we were very segmented as far as looking out after African-American boys. I decided, since I had a daughter, I wanted a program that just gave love to a lot of people, regardless of male or female, regardless of color, just to create diversification in these kids and give them exposure and opportunities that very rarely do they get access to. In 2020, we won a grant to bring kids to the water, but COVID had just came on our shores. And out of panic, governor shut the city down, which stopped a lot of our programming in mid-March. The grantor rescinded its revenue and decided that they would settle on a smaller amount of funding just so that our organization that made a lot of promises to the community would not be looked upon indifferently. We were able to start putting these kids on kayaks inside of an indoor pool, not really thinking that this was going to make a big difference in these kids' lives. Kids go swimming during the summer, but they had never gone kayaking. And for them to actually have their own little vessel inside of an Olympic-sized pool, you would have thought we gave them the keys to a Rolls Royce. They were so happy, and they just played like kids with no stress. And for the first time, they were tired by 3 o'clock, sleepy by 4. We decided to expound upon this concept, and we walked away with what you see now, OPWWEE. This program was then picked up February 2021 by RMBFF and Department of National Resources. That fellowship, partnership, collaboration came from me going to Bass Pro in Arundel Mills, speaking with the event coordinator who had a bluegill program, feeding the other fish, but at the same time raising bluegills. He then gave me Chelsea Miller. Me and Miss Chelsea Miller became very good colleagues. She allowed me to put bluegills in a couple tanks in Baltimore to show these kids how to raise fish and understand the principles of aquaculture. From there, she came up with there's a grant that's sitting on her desk, would like you to apply for it to see how it goes. We ended up winning the grant, and the grant had a couple fundamentals. First, from RBF side, was multi-generational, teach people how to fish. Okay, that's my passion, not hard. Then the state side was, you can teach them how to fish, but you have to stay in Maryland. Okay, we can do that as well. We were given the opportunity, and we had a very, I thought at the time was a big number, teach 30 people how to fish. Male, female, old, young, doesn't matter. When I tell you that we not only did the 30, our numbers show that we hit 535 youth participants and 372 adults. We knocked this out the park so far. I was amazed. We found so many individuals that had never been in the water wanting to be a part of this program that it now scaled itself. It created a niche. We hit 69 African Americans, 14% were Hispanic or Latinos, 4% Native Americans. And outside of this diversity came something from that program. The kids learned hydroponics, aquaculture, they raised turtles, they raised oysters, bluegills, trout in the classroom. They're learning tropical fish as well now. And then we expanded to 5 other schools in the west side of Baltimore currently. We started doing these urban fishing clinics. Urban fishing clinics were designed to bring the water pretty much to the classroom. So we brought kayaks to the field, we brought fishing rods. We gave these kids a hands-on approach to what I do constantly, go fishing. And some of them didn't really respond that well, but many did. And even their parents got on board with, I want to go fishing. I've never been. It was something that was promised to me when I was young. And you could see the disconnect, but you could also hear, I really want this opportunity. We took parents fishing. We took kids fishing. The parents were actually more engaged than the children were, because it took parents all the way back to their childhood of someone promised them to go fishing. It just never happened. And to finally go fishing, learn proficiency, and then catch a catfish, they were just ecstatic. Then we showed them how to clean the fish, prepare the fish, and even how to culinary cook the fish. My background is an executive chef, so we had no problem showing them all of these different attributes around fish and cleaning the fish and eating the fish. So even back in 2020, we were using fishing as a sustainability, since so many folks in the inner city were hit hard from pandemic that lost their jobs, couldn't provide food, that we started going out fishing and just giving away fillets. Now, you mean somebody comes to your doorsteps and hands you 5 to 10 pounds of fresh fillets that just came out the water 2 hours ago? I was like a superhero. It was amazing. We did online Zoom so that people could learn how to do something different with the fish other than just frying it. They enjoyed the culinary recipes that we selected that were using household ingredients that people had in their cupboards and never really used. So it became very functional in a lot of different ways. What we started creating was another model. I ended up reaching out to Heroes on the Water, which was a Los Angeles company that was designed to teach Afghanistan troops from the infantry how to desensitize PTSD. They gave me the blueprint, and I ended up putting it inside of our program of showing the kids how water can be so cathartic that it erases all those anxiety, those panic attacks, the PTSD that our kids in Baltimore are dealing with domestic abuse, physical abuse, or even just everyday violence in their communities. It gave them a retreat place that was safe, that they could just get on a kayak and just drift away. They were able to do boating, so they are learning radar, sonar, fish finding, chart plotting. Last year, we didn't get the instructors for underwater robots, but we have that now. So they're going to build a robot, put it underwater, measure water qualities, and see what a live oyster reef looks like. We ended up picking up so many partners and sponsorships for our, last year was our first fishing tournament for females from land or kayak. We ended up having 18 people show up that fished at Lake Roland, which created another collaboration. We ended up going to Waters Edge Park, which is in Dundalk, and that created another relationship. From all of this entities, we were able to start putting into growing the next stewards of fishermen, of aquaculture, of hydroponics. These kids are like a sponge. They want to absorb as much information possible. This year, we're doing something even further down the scope. I'm going to teach these kids how to go after aquatic invasive species. So we're on the hunt for snakeheads and blue catfish now to show them how to reduce the population of breeder fish. Then they're going to learn how to culinary, cook the fish, clean the catch. We're introducing a new fish preserving technique, which is a Japanese technique called ikejima, which creates a far better tasting fillet as they do in Japan versus our European way of catch and harvesting a fish. I'm trying to use clean words since we're on here and we're not fishermen, all of us. Just how to harvest this fish better so that the flesh is on a superior quality, pretty much like their tuna is treated in Japan. So the kids are going to learn that. We're buying underwater drones so that they can look at the water and then look at the fish below 65 feet, and then they can see, can they catch that fish? Almost like a video game. And that's what I wanted to kind of create for these kids now. From this partnership with National Department of Resource, I've met Jen. We've had a lot of volunteers come out to support. We've got calls from all parts of Maryland wanting our program to come to teach these kids now that we have metrics. We've got calls from Atlanta and Georgia to bring the program down there. And we're just trying to see now currently what's in our best interest and how do we scale this or even start looking at it nationally and globally. I've got a phone call from Colombia, the country, that wants to show us how can we bring this program all the way there. They fish, but they don't have the structure, the curriculum. They don't have access to what we have here from the rods, the reels, the lures, and then the formal training they don't have. So it's reaching so many people more than what I thought this scale could do. That's where we are right now in our concept of this. I've got some bigger places I want to take this, but right now, urban fishing clinics are just starting to pop up. Our kids are going to schools that are interested in our program. So I'm going to do 5 to 10 urban fishing clinics. Last year, we did 107 program events, 89 in person, 18 virtual classrooms. Those 18 virtual classrooms were from YouTube, but most of them were National Aquarium that decided to partner with us, providing virtual content. This year, they're going to do some tours down Cambridge to see an oyster hatchery. And then they're going to go to Pennsylvania to see a large-scale trout hatchery so that they can get different occupations around marine life and understand that. They're going to be introduced to boat salesmen, yacht salesmen. They met boat marina owners last year just so that they could see that this picture of the water has so many jobs and occupations tied to it that most of the kids in inner city never get access to. I want to make the field, I want to level the playing field. And that's what I'm going to do. These kids will have access to everything that I had plus more growing up in one of the only homes on my whole county that had access to a boat. So I wanted to make sure they have that. whether it's just relaxation, whether it's fishing, whether they just want to go to Hart Miller's Island and just walk around their own private island and have a hot dog. I want these kids to have that access. And that's what my goal is, making the next stewards for tomorrow. If we don't put it into these kids, then we lose this water, we lose this planet. And we have to start looking at our global climate change, not from an adult perspective, because truthfully, we only have another 20 to 30 summers to make a difference. If we don't put it into these kids now, we can forget tomorrow. That's where I'm at. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask.
Amazing as always, Minister Brian.
Thank you.
Mr. Brian, you have a sign up for the fishing clinics, yes, for volunteers to come out.
Yes, we
I'm
do have
capturing
that.
some
I can.
contacts in the chat, but we should give that out if we can.
Okay. Miss Marlowe, can I send that to you to distribute? I
Yes.
think that's the easiest way. I'm not too savvy with the technology. I'm a fisherman. You know, fishermen is just starting to learn digital technology. So
Yes, I've got you. I'll send it out with our summary email.
okay, that's easy enough.
I'm also going to try to share very quickly, while if other people have other questions, the photos that you sent me.
Okay, appreciate that as well. I'm always reachable. I'm always open to talk. Always looking for additional funding or partnerships. However, we need to do this to make this happen. I'm open.
Mr. Brian, you have a question here from Ashley. She's going to jump on.
Okay.
Fantastic sounding program. Would love to work with you. I was just going to follow up on what you were just saying and ask you more specifically, like, what would you say right now are some of the key things that you need to scale up your efforts?
Manpower from Department of Natural Resources on boating, funding source, different grants or collaborations of sponsorship. We're going to do a tournament again this year. I want to specify it to, I want to go after the snakehead side and the blue catfish. So that means we have to do a freshwater and a brackish water to get both species. More partnerships. You know, this doesn't work without partnerships. I've learned that now. It takes a lot of synergistic energy. It takes Mr. Ashley, who you know that can help and assist, volunteers that just may be interested in giving time back to kids, whether it's Zoom, in person, or virtual. We're open to that as well. We've got the hard equipment. Now we just need that soft mentorship, is what we call it. Somebody to show the kids how to tie knots. So currently we're about to buy a whole bunch of fly fishing rods. I'm about to teach these kids how to fly fish, which has never really been done anywhere that I can find on the internet or nationally. An African or a minority group of kids learning fly fishing and then taking them so that they can catch that specific fish. That is one of my biggest goals right now. More resources. So we're right now in Baltimore. So that gives me Dundalk, Middle River, Deal Island, Annapolis. We've just got some boats going in up the Susquehanna. So that's helpful. I want to merge into DC. So however far and wide your contacts may help me get into DC, that's a plus. We just filed a permit for DC's Energy and Environment for a scientific permit so that the kids can learn that water and possibly go after snakeheads there in Anacostia Park. So those are some of my wants right now. Hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you, Minister Brian. And Dylan, you want to go ahead? Dylan has a question also.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. That was awesome to hear about your program, Minister Brian. I was just going to mention, I saw that you're headed down to an oyster aquaculture facility in Cambridge, which I guess is Horn Point. But
Correct.
I was just going to mention Imani Black and Minorities in Aquaculture. I know that she is a student at Horn Point right now, and it might be worth reaching out to her and that group. And then I also wanted to mention I fly fish a lot, and I know there's a group called Brown Folks Fishing, which is they're a national group, and they do a lot of really cool teaching and engagement things that you might be interested in reaching out to them as well. But
Okay, sounds great. If you could send me a contact, Dylan, I'll follow it up. I thank you. If you ever want to volunteer, I know we have Trout in the Classroom, Tom and Jim, but they're pretty much time is all over the place. They're heavy scheduled. So I'm trying to find additional support on the fly fishing side for them. We've got CCA, which is David Sikorsky, and just trying to coordinate with his schedule. So I think the industry or the passion is so wide in the fly fishing area that we can definitely collaborate somewhere and help these kids learn how to fly fish and give them other tools. They're learning spin cast and spinners. The bait casters are a little bit different because I don't need a whole lot of time with backlashing, but definitely some fly fishing. So I thank you, Dylan.
yeah, I'd love to help out.
Am I missing another question somewhere?
I think we've gotten through the questions. We just have some comments in the chat. Everyone's excited about the programming, so I think we're getting some good connections going here.
Okay, that sounds
Awesome,
great.
Mr. Bryan.
Thank you. They were able to run down the Seven River Association and see how, as adults, we hurt Seven River. Whether it was from the agriculture point into the water to the feed that we were feeding the animals that ran off. We've just polluted Severn River. It's making a very slow comeback. The kids needed to actually see it to understand it. And that's another variable that we just don't do well as adults. We don't tend to show our transparencies of our mistakes well. We knew this water was going to be bad many, many years ago. We knew when we passed certain bills that agriculture and taking care of livestock was going to play a toll on this water. But we were chasing profitability more than we were chasing environment. And now that we're here, we still haven't been as transparent as we need when we make mistakes. We've got to give these kids the tools, the understanding, the everything that they need to fix our planet that we're messing up. I don't know how to say it any differently. Yes, there's a lot of litter in Baltimore. Yes, we could do a lot more with beautification in some areas. And the kids are working on that as well. Stormwater mitigation is still a very big factor here running into Jones Falls. So they're going to have to deal with cleaning the stream, no way around it. But they're willing to do that if we show them how. And we just have to be adults that are accountable to them. They'll do what they need to do to make it work. And I found that there was a stigma attached to minorities in environmental education for a very long time. And when I finally understood the problem, the environmental piece of whether you get a grade F on water or a grade B isn't the same in certain communities. We saw that with Flint, Michigan. We treat water differently, or even the environment differently around certain culture of people, whether that's the biasness that we don't deal with or bring to the table or talk about. We have to be able to talk and explain that the people that we're affecting need to have a voice in how we change this problem. And oftentimes we're left outside of the table to discuss what we think should go on in our neighborhoods that we're suffering from the disease of. So that's my goal. Give these kids everything that they need to make a change in this water and in this planet. That's the only way you're going to make a steward of tomorrow. Anything less than that, we're wasting time and resources and feel good opportunities. Thank
Agree,
you.
Minister Brian. Agree. We do have a couple people with some more questions. So Tristan was first, and then we'll go back to Ashley again.
Okay.
Okay, I have two questions. And
As
actually,
many as
maybe Minister Brian, we'll start with yours and then I'll come back to mine again later if we have time. I was wondering, and maybe I missed it. How do you find the kids to be part of your program? Like, how does that outreach happen?
Okay, so one of the models that we found last year that works so well, we partnered with Recs and Parks in Baltimore City because we knew Recs and Parks had kids. They didn't have any program structure and they wanted to get away from home. So if your child is spending 6 to 8 hours at Recs, then they want something to do. We just got to give them something that's fundamental for them to gravitate and engage with. Once we did that, then the question was, you can't talk about fishing without introducing them to a rod and a reel. So that's where the idea of urban fishing clinics came up with. Let's bring that to the kids versus making the kids go to the water. And they were so excited that once they learned how to cast something so simple, they wanted to put it in practice. I want to go to the water, see what I can catch. So we took them to a local pier and they caught 3-inch spot that I used as bait that threw it back out and caught a 15-pound catfish, and they were floored. They were floored. It only takes one fish to catch and you're hooked on fishing. To have something pull against you, give you some resistance, and you know that's possible, dinner on the other line, that's a highlight in anybody's book. That's why we go fishing. And as a vegetarian, I don't even eat the fish anymore, but I give it away to everybody. After we learned that one main objective, the next part was we've got to get kids out. If you're going to keep me in the same community that's detrimental to my mental standpoint, then I don't want any involvement. But if you can give me, I'm going to take a vacation to across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and when I get there, I have a boat waiting for me in a private pool, they fighting in line. I had kids waiting like 2 weeks to go. 60 kids in my next. Yep, it's your turn. Let's go. They were just that ecstatic because they had never been across the Bay Bridge. They had never seen so much water. They had never had a private pool that they had all to themselves. And let alone get on a boat and just go somewhere and fish and eat and go to a restaurant when you got back. That was something amazing to these kids that only know McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Burger King. They don't know restaurants. So word spread like wildfire, and that's how we got our 537 number. What was your second question, Tristan?
Oh, my second question was actually for Emily, because Minister Brian, you got me thinking about the whole scalability of a program. And Emily, I was wondering if you had any advice for teachers or those of us who work with schools that don't have such an amazing campus and access to local water, how we might use your program as inspiration.
I think building off of what Mr. Brian was suggesting, partnerships are incredibly important. I could not deliver the kind of programming that I'm able to do for all of my students without the partnerships of environmental education nonprofits, of professionals like we have on the call from DNR. Our partnerships span, commercial enterprises as well as nonprofits. So I would say reaching out, starting in your community, reaching out if you're in a school. Mayo has tremendous amount of resources. That's the Maryland Association of Outdoor and Environmental Educators. And they will help connect you to some of the many different groups that we've been talking about over the course of this hour's meeting.
So I said I was going to, after I eat, I was going to practice my exercise. And so I just
Tristan, thank you, Emily. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm all set
Okay.
now. Thanks.
Okay, Ashley, I know you had your hand raised. Do you have a question still? I see it's lowered now.
No, I just took it down because I knew I'd forget otherwise.
Yep, I got you. I realize just as a host now, I can lower your hand. So that was a new fun thing to learn.
That's some power.
Yeah.
So, Minister Brian,
Yes, sir.
and I'm curious, I want to follow up on the workforce development side of what you've been talking about. There's a lot of us, many on this call, trying to figure out how to make stronger connections between the environmental education aspect and pipelining that into more action and actual workforce development and ultimately careers. So just curious to hear a bit more about how we might be able to help on the workforce development side. Do you need more opportunities for the kids to engage in restoration projects where they get paid? Would they be interested in doing restoration in their own communities and making that connection between a healthy local community and a healthy bay?
The youth that we have this summer are from Youth Work. So they're getting paid to do any and all things needed for 5 weeks. To do an internship after that would be a great plus, where they could continue that work and still do some part-time employment, making that salary, I should say, would help to not only keep them consistent in environmental education, but start to steer them. We've got CCB in Baltimore that's using nanobites to corral oil pollution, oil spills in various bodies of water. They have asked for some of my group to come to see how nanos are coming into bioscience. We've got IMAT downtown that's doing some bioscientific stuff as well, which is a little bit beyond my pay grade, but I'm trying to learn just as well with the kids how the digital platform and the robotic side of this can impact national resources. We've got instructors, mentors, leaning towards maritime to see if the kids have an invitation to go maritime, longshoremen or women wise to go there. That's a nice salary, but you're away for 6 to 7 months at a time on a rig. So it's a lot of occupations that I'm still discovering. One of the things that I was trying to find was an environmental I'm sorry, I'm messing this label up, but it's an individual that tracks environmental dollars that come inside of Maryland from a nationality standpoint. And these are kids that don't necessarily want to be on the water, but are very math inclined. They love numbers and they'll compute numbers all day and be happy. So I'm trying to give them that exposure to economics, environmental economics, that's what it's called, so that they can track the recreational side, so that they can see how much money from different cultures are being spent that either help the water or degrade the water. And why is that money not really doing what it's supposed to do? They say if you follow the money, you can follow the problem. So giving them exposure to that is a different occupation that many don't see. We've got the hard jobs, the salesmanships, the boats. We've got the mechanics that fix the boats. But now I'm trying to merge into Navy and Coast Guard just to give them a military understanding of various jobs on the water, even Marine police. So there's a lot around us. We just need to see how to partner to put it all together and everybody has a piece of the pie. my last statement would probably be, Mr. Ashley, that DC has an environmental education program that we're going to take the kids to see there. But unfortunately, park life from a ranger standpoint, no disrespect, it's just not a sexy enough position that kids go ooh and ow for. You know, our kids see so much media that they want big money, unfortunately. And, you know, a park ranger just doesn't exude big money occupation, unfortunately. But his job is very important, helping to shape the next stewards of land, of water. And I'm trying to right now put a scholarship together for UMES down on Eastern Shore, for a friend that just passed away who was an avid fisherman. So I'm gonna make a scholarship happen in his name to help somebody get into a marine biology program or environmental education program. Hope that answers your question, Mr. Ashley.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
right. Oh, my heavens.
Thanks all. I just want to note we've got about 3 minutes left. So I think that we probably have time for one more quick question if anyone has it. I know there's no hands raised though. So
Right.
if not, I think we will end the webinar for the day.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay. I was giving a long pause to see if we would gain anyone else, but looks like that's it. So thank you, everyone. We did record this, so that will be sent out. I'll make sure that I share our presenters' contact information as well. We really appreciate everyone being here today, and thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister Brian. Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah. Oh, wow.